This is the E-commerce Brain Trust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our brain trust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Hello and welcome to the E-commerce Brain Trust podcast. I'm Julie Spear, Head of Retail Marketplace Services at Acadia, alongside my co-host, Jordan Ripley, Director of Retail Operations. And today we're joined by one of our frequent guests, a good friend of ours, the musically inclined CPG guru, Chris Perry of Firstmovr. He has spent the last several months educating brands on how to prepare for the new age of product discovery and conversion paths with AI-enabled search. We're lucky enough to have him come on today and share some tips and learnings from these trainings directly. So with that, big intro there. Welcome, Chris. It's great to have you back.
Thank you so much, Jordan and Julie. I'm excited to be here just to share a little bit of my passion and make up words, geekity, around this space. I love the digital shelf, but obviously the digital shelf is changing as it always has, but even more quickly than ever before. I know they've always say the pace of change is faster than it really is. And it's because it's catering to the shopper and creating frictionless shopping that's even more enhanced and driving more engagement, time spent, conversion, and ultimately, so then everyone's flocking to it. So it just like chicken and egg, it keeps fueling one another really, really quickly. And again, consumers, as they always said, Steve Jobs said, consumers don't know what they want until you show it to them. And they wanted a better search experience. And now it's happening. And that means we need to cater to a different type of search.
Yeah, it's the pace of change. It's very hard to keep up with all the information, all the changes. So this is where I'm really excited for us to dig into what you've put together, because I think it'll be a helpful tool for everyone listening. One of the things that Jordan and I have had many conversations over the past several months with big brains in our space that like the geekity of it all relative to AI. And one of the things that we've started asking is how you're using Rufus or other elements of AI search personally as a shopper, not as an industry expert. So how is this playing out for you in the wild?
As with anything that's new, there's always a little bit of, even when it's easier or even better, it's new, right? Anything new is uncomfortable when I haven't done it before until I go, wow, that got me a way better result. It's that common question of like, I do what I do because that's what I do, except is what I'm doing getting me what I want? And when I don't get, even in that little bit of friction, obviously we already know how important load times on websites are. And if things don't load, like we get all upset if it doesn't load in like 3 milliseconds. Like if it's just that much, I move to something else. Like I'm frustrated. First world problems, right? Search is the same thing. It's like the search happens fast, except I'm not getting the answers that I need. So I have to go back and do it again. And arguably sometimes I want to say it's human error or opportunity, right? I didn't brief my search correctly. I didn't elongate my query to be a little more encompassing of what I really wanted. But I've been trained for a while to just plug in a phrase, right?
Yeah.
Just laundry detergent, lavender, right? Or something simple, or toothpaste whitening, or whitening toothpaste, whatever I'm suggesting first. But really, I'm kind of going back to like what Google had right to begin with is I'm asking questions. They're longer queries, but the problem is it couldn't converse with me and then reflect on what it knows about me and then what I've bought before. And so obviously that's where the AI history piece even adds some additional opportunity for personalization. But I've just found it very kind of instinctual, like as I've been doing it a lot of it for work and for workshops and trainings and content, I find myself practicing it, but then quickly going like, oh, wow, this really helped me figure out how to sift through all these choices. And again, we go back to, I've been working with a couple companies on like category management workshops, for instance, and we always come back to something that's still very true for this agentic AI search world is choice paralysis, like the paradox of choice. I want more options, but I can't fathom looking through all of them. Help me get it back down to the 3 or 5 max that I can get to. So the everything store is awesome until I'm overwhelmed by the everything store. And then I need to get back to a something store or the thing store. I've just found myself intuitively doing it more and more, even for simple things like stuff that low involvement categories like paper towels or skincare products or personal care, OTC. But obviously for higher involvement things too, where I'm looking at lots of features and I'm techie for e-commerce, not techie for tech. So like, for personal tech. So it's like not knowing all, because everything's advanced so fast in a matter of a year since I bought the last one and there's new features and I'm asking. And it's also really good for obviously ideation. I'm an invention discernment working genius style. If you ever do the 6 Types of Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni.
That's one of my favorite books. You're coming back for another
just took a hard ride to
No, but like I'm an invention discernment person. So for me, I want ideas and I need to discern, but I like a tool that matches my geniuses and helps me get to that. And so even just like both of my boys had their 10th and 12th birthdays. So obviously they have everything. They don't need anything, but we wanted to get them things, a token thing, knowing that half of it was going to like Robux on Roblox or something like, but just what are ideas for them when they kind of have all the things that most kids could ever dream of? Like that helped. Was like, oh, okay, out of the 6 ideas, 5 of them I already knew, but that 6th one I hadn't thought of. That's a really cool idea. To be fair, I could have probably bumped around and found that on my own in search, but I found it in a matter of seconds with Rufus or with the ChatGPT if I pulled it back one lever. But I also could use a ChatGPT to help me sift through Amazon specifically if I just prompt it correctly to filter out other retail choices.
Yeah, this resonates so much with me. Your working genius, mine is tenacity. And like, I have the problem of everyone assumes endless assortment is a net positive thing for the customer. And for sure, there's value to that. But it's like, just get me to a Costco and give me 3 of this thing and know that it's been vetted by the buyer and they're good for like a low consideration purchase. And I feel like these agentic or AI solutions have brought the sort of Costco experience to endless assortment, where it's like, yeah, everything is out there. I just don't give me the garbage of going through each one of those SKUs.
I think that's a really great, and arguably not to knock a Costco buyer or a club buyer, right? But the human is smart and can make good decisions, but they're also looking at what's the top seller, the most popular brand. Those are the only ones we let in and we have to test and vet them. But AI arguably could look at a lot more signals in real time and then curate that much faster than even club could on seasonal rotations. I think to your point, I love that. It is the club buyer filter enhanced with even more data in real time.
Yes. And so like I get the Kirkland signature jeans, the agent gets them for me. It's great.
It's true.
I mean, this is actually a good segue to the next thing where it's like, I know a lot of your work, Chris, and Firstmovr's work is a keen focus on digital shelf and getting sort of legacy organizations to understand, okay, if you're walking the store, you can't just be walking the brick and mortar aisle anymore. This has to be an omni experience where we're having like good category management and that sort of thing. But now we're sort of entering this new era, right? Where it's like, okay, the old walk the aisle, walk the store is not necessarily the same approach that we can use. And we'll talk through a lot of those things that are evolving. But I'm just curious, was there a moment, Chris, where you were like giving a training or something? You're like, okay, this is fundamentally different. Like we can't continue going down this route. I'm curious what was the impetus for this change?
We do 101 to, obviously for any function, global, local, senior practitioner. And this isn't, selling at anybody. We have to train lots of different groups, right? And we have to bring them all along, right? So, but sometimes we're doing like more 401 level advanced stuff, working on a retailer, on a strategy across retailers. So the challenge is we still have a lot of companies, and I don't criticize them, but we're still learning the 101 in 2025 of just how the basics work. It's funny. I've heard people say not to use this analogy, but it's an easy one for people. It's like omni-channel and e-commerce and retail media and digital shelf and all the things that fall under that. That's like learning mathematics. And there are different levels of mathematics. If commerce is mathematics, AI is the TI-83, and somebody told me that was old, so the TI-89 or whatever the better one is.
Whatever lets me play Snake, it's that one.
It's the calculator, but obviously it's way more than a calculator.
Yeah.
It can do the thing for you proactively in many cases, not just respond to my action.
Yeah.
The reality is I need to know the omni mathematics, and then I also need to know how to use the calculator or the tool or work with the agent, the more proactive tool, to make this work. So as I've been training, and I had some in the last couple of weeks that were kind of the more 101 digital shelf and how paid search and search works. As I'm going through that, I'm like, I feel like I'm not doing you service because there's not enough time to get from the math to the tool. Mm-hmm. And when I lightly touch that there is this tool that's changing everything, I'm not really giving you the full story, but because you are several years, I say, behind on just the foundational math, I can't do this justice. But also sometimes the person I'm working with to coordinate the program, they're like, yeah, don't get into that right now. Oh, don't tell them that there's a flood coming and you need to get on the ark, or you need to build an ark. Oscar and I keep saying this is our ark moment, is AI. Both, yes, for a shopper, but separately, we're working on a lot of what is prompt design and prompt engineering and prompt laddering and all these things, the tool skills on top of the commerce skills, because no one's really saying, please come teach us that or weave that in. Like if I went there, somebody'd say I diverted from the objective, but the objective really is I got to prepare you for the flood. And if you don't think the flood's here, look down, your feet are wet. It's here. I say there's a positive to this, obviously, too. I don't mean to like, it's not to be a fear mongering thing. It's just more of we don't have 15 years to get e-commerce right again. We've got to do this in 3. And the people that do will win, and the people that don't may not win. They may not play. That's the scary part. But I say, I've just been in trainings where it was like, as I'm designing it, I'm like, we really should put something in here, just at least no one can say we didn't say it, but we're not doing it justice. And I don't want to sell another session just to do a longer program, but we need to start pulling the tool skills in as well as the information skills or the information understanding.
Yeah. I feel like that is what makes a lot of this so challenging. Is like a lot of the guidance feels very conceptual, very theoretical of like, well, you have to understand how an LLM works and you need to. And what I liked about the information that you've shared across around some of these trainings is it's like very practical, right? You went through 5 different customer journeys around toothpaste, sunscreen, protein bars, things that people are looking for, and then identified, okay, these are the things that we're seeing that you need to plan for. And the first one of those focuses on this idea of like a whitening toothpaste for sensitive teeth, right? Where you pull it up in Amazon, traditional SERP, what does it look like? Pull it up in Rufus, what does that look like? And compare it and start to compare and contrast. So I was wondering if you could kind of elaborate a bit on like, what are the initial salient things that you start to coach brands on that you see?
And one, just like build on this, is I think in the same way that people intuitively walk the physical store when they would manage, especially an omni-channel retailer. I walk the physical store. I don't even think twice. I saw a new innovation. I saw an end cap. I took a picture. I sent it to the right person. I don't even do that. I just sent the brand team, hey, did you know this competitor launched this? Because it looks like a soft test launch in 200 stores. I just wanted you to be aware. Hey, I saw this promotion running. Did we know that they were running that? That's going to impact. Like, it's muscle memory. I already know this. But then online, again, just the normal digital shelf, it's like, I don't know where to start. And you're like, well, are we in stock? Are we in distribution? Is the price the price that we thought it was going to be? Obviously, and I realize you have to relearn the principles with new practices, but it's not scary. Like, bump around a little bit, fail a bit. No one's judging you. Walk the shelf, spirit walk, see what you see. What do you have questions about? Same thing with agentic AI. Do it. There's no right. At some point, if you do it for yourself as a shopper and you document it, if you could pause for a second, like, oh, I did that first. And when I'm at work, I do this first. But just document your steps. And you're one of a sample size of many that you need to consider. But it's not scary. But going to your point, and I won't name names of brands because it wasn't to knock the brands. It was like I was just experiencing several major category ones and actually played off things that I was buying just to see, in some cases, how I would have shopped. But my wife has sensitive teeth, so we were looking for whitening toothpaste for sensitive teeth. And we were open to new brands because we saw a TV ad that mentioned something new, and we were thinking, so if I search for it, I get a certain set of search results. But if I asked Rufus, the overall pick on Amazon was one brand, was brand A. But when I asked Rufus, what are the best toothpastes, whitening toothpaste for sensitive teeth, I got the other top row organic search result SKUs, but not the overall pick, which is really weird. Why would their overall pick for that whitening toothpaste for sensitive teeth not show up when I asked Rufus? Now, you have to remember, the shopper probably isn't going to start thinking like a brand strategist and go, why didn't that brand that I didn't now even consider show up? Because they're not going to know it. They didn't consider it. It's just not there. Unless they used to use brand A and they kind of wondered, why isn't brand, have I been using the wrong one? So I just said the beauty of any of these GPT agentic models is you can ask them why they didn't do the thing that they didn't do, which is kind of enlightening. You can't say, hey, Google, until they introduced AI. Why didn't you offer the thing I thought you were going to offer, right? Ask Rufus why, and it will answer, she will answer it. And what was interesting is then I said, is that brand A a whitening toothpaste for sensitive teeth. And it says, while it is very effective on whitening, and some have said that they have sensitive teeth and have found it still beneficial, it's not really designed for sensitive teeth. Thus explaining, now when you say based on its current content, it wasn't communicating that it was. So for all we know, brand A really was for sensitive teeth, but that wasn't an explicit claim it makes. And maybe it really can't make that claim, but what if it could? And we just need to get brand and legal around making that a very explicit thing it's called out for, because clearly people with sensitive have been using this, or it wouldn't have risen in search over time and been something bought and rated and reviewed well. So I say that in the sense of like, the first point I made is just don't be afraid of not knowing what you're looking for. I always say use Sesame Street science. Which one is not like the other? Hey, I did this and I did that, and these look different. What might be the driver? You're smart enough to know some of the P's, right? The 4 P's that might be an influencer. If it's not this one, then maybe it's this one. And you might still be wrong, but you'll be directionally closer to the answer than we're ever going to get, because Amazon is never going to tell us the Rufus algorithm, right? But we can get closer to hacking like, the one that came up looks like it's doing this thing that mine isn't doing, right? And it could be really tactical, but as we know in e-commerce, the tactics are the strategies often. I have so many examples, even from not just the ones I'd sent you to show you like some of the fun, but again, it's just starting to like go down the rabbit hole a little bit, because what you learn in the rabbit hole, you can apply to the entire ant colony of rabbit holes if we want to merge animal species here.
Horrifying, but I'm tracking.
Yeah, ant-like rabbits who take over the world. No, but it's kind of exciting because then you feel kind of like a detective sleuthing this, and then first mover, all puns intended, getting that first mover advantage and like hacking this. Clearly, it's not black hat, even gray hat. You're just being smart and getting out proactively to figure out, as of today, with the way Rufus or ChatGPT is set up, what do I need to do a little differently? Let me test and learn. Will I see a change in what shows up? And then again, ask a friend, right? Hey, what do you see? Because it will be very different. It'll be Minority Report level at some point where Julie, Jordan, and Chris all see slightly different things with the same query. But in general, there's going to be something that would allow the same brand A to show back up again if that was really relevant for each of the three of us.
One of the other elements of the Rufus rabbit hole that you touched on is the pre-filled Ask Rufus questions that appear on PDPs. Can you talk a little bit about what you discovered when you were digging into that lane of Rufus? Instead of starting your shopper journey in the search with Rufus, you're on the PDP and there are those pre-filled Q&As. What did you discover as you dug into that, went down that rabbit hole?
There's 2 immediate parts that come to mind. One is whether you're in Rufus and it suggests the next questions after your first question, or even as the first one if you open it up, but you haven't yet typed anything in. But also on the PDP, to your point, where it's got the little ones underneath the carousel right now, like the suggested ones, it's somewhat engaging, right? The first thing is it's almost trying to have a conversation with me before I've had a conversation with it. So undoubtedly, more people will start to use a Rufus or a Sparky or other tools in the future if those types of elements are there, because I'm not seeing it as just search bar type done. It's actually already proactively starting to talk to me. But the second part is it brings up things. I'm sure this will evolve to be more algorithmic and AI driven around what are the most people asking about or reviewing about. But it brings up topics I wouldn't have thought of because it's already simplified my search choices, or I'm on one and I'm just thinking about that one. It starts bringing up questions I might not have thought of. And the one that like popped in my head about like toothpaste was like, does this contain artificial sweeteners? Now, I don't normally think about that when I think about toothpaste. I'm not eating it, but it is in my mouth, and I mean, it's in my system. And the funny part for me, why that popped up, and I'm sure I eat way too many things that have artificial sweeteners, but I remember when I met my wife of 20 plus years now, and I met her in college, and we were in choir together, and we were on this choir tour, and it was the first year, and we had a really large choir, so I hadn't met her officially one-to-one yet because we had a very large group. And we were at dinner, like the buffet dinner, and I picked up a diet soda can, and the person I sat next to, who was her roommate, introduced us. And I remember the first thing she said to me was like, "That's going to kill you." And I'm like, "You're the one. You're the one." And she's like, "Because of the aspartame." And I'm like, "What?" And I was thinking of Obviously, we're not fanatics or anything, but I just remember that very distinctly because very few times you meet someone and they tell you you're going to die, and you're also like the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. So like, you might as well, let's just go. But for me, it's funny because I don't normally think about that, but maybe I would. It makes me think about what is in that toothpaste, because obviously there are a number of natural brands that are still very effective, right? That on the scenes. In one way, it pivots my decision making. It adds a complexity, but it's more personal because I didn't have to pick that question. There were other ones that were relevant, that could have been relevant too. But it made me have a conversation about what is in there and what should I buy. If I don't care, then I wouldn't have clicked on it. I would have moved on. But because I did care and it was something that goes back, has a story for me, it made me think about it. So I think that's the one. It prompts you, all puns intended with prompt, it prompts you to engage when you might not have to. And then it also brings up other pieces of content that not all brands are talking about that actually might be a deciding factor. And it's pulling from reviews and search behavior and other things. So just something interesting if you see a weird left field bogey question, don't disregard that right away.
That one's for Chris.
Just a little research. Is that actually important, even if it's a long tail piece of content, right? Just for that random Chris Perry that's going to search whether this has artificial.
Should I be eating this toothpaste?
Right, exactly. Something interesting, yeah.
I feel like that goes, again, when we've had conversations about AI-assisted search on this show, a wish list item that often comes up is the idea of, I just want to know, like, how many of my searches are Rufus searches, or what's my share of voice for Rufus, or things like that. And on one hand, I totally get that. It would be nice to quantify that internally at a brand of, well, we're 30% Rufus, we could get to 40. But at the same time, when we talk through it really practically here, so many elements of this customer journey are Rufus influenced, where it's like the dynamic of, I search 3 words and I go to a PDP and I click the add to cart button or not. That is a dinosaur dynamic at this point. I think we just have to wrap our brains around.
In my mind, we almost have to think about it like in the same way that there was a dinosaur brick and mortar model. Yes, people still go to store. Yes, people will do pickup and delivery. I'm like, all the models will exist, but each one is a different type of behavior, arguably best fit for different missions. If we really want to be thoughtful, experienced designers and category manager leads, even if we're not traditional Catman people, thinking about that. There is a role for the store that can be truly optimized for the modern shopper, whether it's digital or not, digitized or AI assisted or not, that is still relevant. But it's more that, to your point, it's a bifurcated way of thinking. And even then within the new way of thinking, there's new bifurcations, right? Or trifurcations or whatever you want to call it. But both have to exist because there are still people doing it one way. And then there are people doing it this new way or a hybrid of the two. And more at some point, I really do. I don't know how fast it will be, but it's going to be synonymous, right? My search bar will be my Rufus bar. I don't know why they would have it separate. There may be enhanced Rufus things like, hey, you were just asking the initial query. You're not even ready for the extra questions yet. But I don't know why they would keep them totally separate, because at some point it will feel clunky and like we're siloing our simple experience. So obviously, Amazon, whenever they're testing something new, they're not going to throw that. They're not going to swap it out completely. They're going to bridge you into it. But at some point, why it feels like search already. Yeah. Why wouldn't it just merge together in a matter of a year or so? And I'm sure they'll be one of the first to merge and like train, as they always have, train us into this is and for all intents and purposes, as always, Amazon's historically played chess while everybody else plays checkers. They'll be the one that trains the shopper to expect that kind of frictionless experience and that more personalized, relevant experience. And then everyone else will be chasing them, even though I want to applaud a Walmart and others for getting out ahead of this too. But it's those players are going to be the ones that change consumer expectations on this journey. And then everyone else will be just following suit. And they will have, Jordan, that clunky, old school, oh, you just have search?
Yeah. I would love to end with some of the like practical kind of what the hell do I do with this if I'm a brand, which Chris, I think you did a great job outlining in here of you went through a lot of these, you saw specific instances of these are opportunity gaps where there's content opportunities to better guide the customer on this flow. And again, not expecting you to name specific brands here, but for some of those smoking guns, I'm just curious if you can talk to a few of those things of, okay, I'm trying to search for this and it's not surfacing in the way it is, and all the various like areas that brands could be capitalizing on that.
100%. And I wanted this to seem broad because, again, why I went down those very specific shopping journeys was on purpose, because there's obviously what works for toothpaste, whitening toothpaste for sensitive skin is not going to be suntan lotion for sunscreen for teenage preteen boys or whatever it may be. It's going to be some of the same principles going to be applied. It'll be a little different. But I would say one thing that's funny, where a lot of folks had gone to, I have basic content on my digital shelf. I've checked the box. It even looks nice and pretty. It tells a little bit of a story about my brand or my product. And then it was more about hacking the SEO of it and then driving a lot of paid and retail media to it. Not that that's wrong, but that worked until a Rufus enters the picture. And we have to think about that. Julie, I know as part of our in caps, right? We were looking at some of the best PDPs in a category on a lot of factors, but one of them being shopper centricity. So it's almost like you took a step back to go back to the human, the pro-human part. Is this actually not just telling a story, but the right story for a specific shopper persona? Yes, products can be bought by anyone. I can buy baby diapers, right? Even if I have no babies, right? I can do it. It's weird. I can do it, right? But it's not for me. So the content shouldn't be talking to a babyless dad that has no contact and should not to another baby anytime soon. It needs to talk to dads and moms or guardians or whoever may be the one caring for these babies. So it's got to talk to a specific persona. So we went there is an art and a science to making something more story selling centric, right? That approach, if you do it correctly, is going to feed agentic AI because that very same shopper is going to be the one typing in, is this really good for sensitive skin? Is this sunscreen right for sensitive skin? Or they're going to be asking more questions. And if the content tells that explicitly in copy, in imagery, because the Rufus is pulling up images if they have that very specific piece of content in there. And obviously if they don't, then they can't draw upon any content. And if they don't, it's based on what people in the reviews say, which may or may not have been confirming that. Yeah, a few people said there was mixed reaction from reviews about whether this worked for sensitive skin. Like, you don't need to leave it to the masses to hopefully guide your decision. You want to make sure you're very clear about it up front. So I think, honestly, I'd almost say go old school and think about the human first, right? It's like media briefing. I know you guys do this all the time. It's media briefing. 4-part objective. What am I trying to achieve? What kind of growth am I trying to achieve? What audience would I need to reach to achieve that? What behavior do I change in that audience? How would I talk to a new person versus a lapse versus a heavy buyer? What's my communication objective? What tactics would I use and how would I measure that? Same thing can be done for the digital shelf. And you're not going niche. You're just being smart, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound, right? In your design. And then you just keep iterating. And honestly, trying to figure out, Jordan, you mentioned like the share of the agentic recommendations is going to be a fleeting thing until an Amazon gives you that as a report. But even if you could come up with a panel, like I'm sure somebody's working on this right now, but like a statistically significant 200-person panel that asks the same query at the same time to just try to get an idea of who comes up and how often is it the same. Just snapshots would give us a first directional view. But even before that's happening, it's just more about, am I the best product with the best story for the right shopper? I know that sounds so basic, but we're skipping that. And my one last thing, you mentioned like one of the sunscreens that we looked at was on page 3 of Amazon for sunscreens for sensitive skin. There's a lot of sensitive here. We're very into sensitive skin. But it was the number one ChatGPT recommended product for that same query. And so then I asked ChatGPT, why is this so low on Amazon when you rank it so high as the top one on Amazon? And it specifically said, sometimes the best products don't rank the best.
I love that.
What a weird
felt like a broadside, I guess.
But what a weird little insight. Like sometimes people have hacked their way to the top, right? And they're not actually the best product for what you need, but other social content and signals tell you that they're actually the best. The content, brand provided, industry provided, influencer, social user generated, they validate that it's actually the best. So obviously that opens up an opportunity for those with that kind of discrepancy. A lot of brands out there with that kind of discrepancy, but it goes back to, am I telling the right story? Do I have the right proposition that would earn me good feedback anyway, that would earn an endorsement from anyone? Then am I sharing that story the right way? And that will be iterative, but that's why we can't treat the digital shelf as a project. It's a process. You're constantly doing this. And then you got to test, even if it's a sample size of us, just the 3 of us doing it. That would give us at least 3 points of triangulation. Hey, that brand A from the toothpaste didn't show up for Julie, but it did show up for Jordan and me. Like, why? I don't know, because maybe she's never bought that brand before, so it just wouldn't even...
My teeth aren't sensitive enough.
But we're still in the art phase of this. There is a little bit of a science and a math to it, but you have to get the art part first so that then you can formulate for my category, my brand, or my retailer, what are the steps. But we have cheat sheets and things we can share if people want to reach out. Just on just a starter set of simple questions you can ask, like that you tailor to your category, just to start seeing what comes up and why it might be coming up that way. Then ask the tool, why did you be the brand person at that point? Why did you not recommend this? Or why are you recommending that? Even say, what should I do to optimize? It will give you some pretty interesting recommendations. ChatGPT actually recommended, I'm not saying they meant to, AI did it, right? AI made me do it, but they recommended a review that included the keywords that you wanted to show up for. It wrote a review that theoretically, if that had been left, would give the algorithm those keywords to consider to bring you up higher. So it actually was offering a gray hat tactic without overtly saying it.
Amazon compliance, cover your ears.
No, but I'm not saying you should do that. Yeah. What I'm saying, though, is it knew that it was giving very thoughtful hacking recommendations. The point being, though, is for me, it would be, okay, don't break the rules, right? But if I could get more reviews from people who have this need state without overtly, again, incentivizing them or whatever, but if I could get more reviews and include, I might be able to get people talking about the sensitive skin or I love that lavender smell or whatever it is, so that I am showing up in reviews for that more specifically. So I would never recommend you go any gray hat tactic, but it's funny that it too knew that would solve some of the problem of not showing up. But it might give you also an insight, because for me, it was like, I would never do that, but I could use for other retailers an Influencer or a Bazaar Voice, like more reviews from people with that problem or that need. Obviously with a Vine program or just better content about this, I'm going to attract the right people. And then those people, if they like my product, will probably talk about the reason they came in for that product. So there are some like intuitive things you can do without going gray hat on this space. But I have just so much fun with it. And honestly, it's Oscar and I at Firstmovr, we can bump around in the night and fail because we own our own company. Our team isn't going to get in trouble because the CPG said you wasted our time. No, because we wasted our time not to waste it, to figure it out so we can help you not waste your time. And I know you do the same. Like no one's wasting their time, but we can do the things and take risks to figure something out so that we can bring that back to brands and retailers who need the support.
Get the fun stuff.
It has been a fun conversation. And you've taken something, it's daunting because of the pace of change. The implication, if you're not keeping pace with it, is significant. So this can feel daunting to brands, but you've shared some real practical, straightforward ways of looking at it and putting tests to use. And your enthusiasm is contagious and it makes you more excited to dig in and learn more. So thank you, Chris. It was great having you on. You'll, of course, be back to talk about other research and work that you all are doing at Firstmovr. It was great talking today.
Thank you so much for having me.